All right, guys, before we get started, what I want you to do is go ahead and hit that like button, hit share, hit subscribe, hit follow, whatever works best on the platform that you're on. Everything that you do to engage with the PAWCast helps us spread the message and really helps reinforce us being the force of change within veterinary medicine, and we're extremely grateful if you're able to do that for us. So thank you very much. All right, let's get to the show.
I know, it's a good intro.
I know.
Yeah, dude, on the button, he just comes screaming in.
I know.
He's sweating a little. Just a little.
bit. Yeah. Yeah. We moved a considerable amount of patience in a short period of time.
All is well.
Yes,
We made it.
We did.
All right. Well, you're going to start this. I'm going to close that door while you do.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. So, so welcome back for another podcast, of course, today, on time. We are live, aren't we?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Awesome. So, sorry. Still haven't really gotten my mind into it.
You haven't gotten your breath back yet?
Yes. So, yeah. As far as today, it's like, what was the headline, the tagline that you put on?
Today was the PAW Health Way.
Oh, yeah, the PAW Health Way.
So we had previously discussed, basically, Bre, you kind of, you're at nearing the end of your externship, which is great and unfortunate all at the same time.
Cue the tears.
But you and I had the chance to basically talk about the fact that you've had experience and education outside of here. And Rebecca, you're similar. You're not as in depth into what we've been doing, but you also listen to like every podcast that there is. So
No, I'm still like 20 behind. I still have like 20 left.
I tapered it off after like 60. Or 50.
50.
Yeah, 50.
Yeah, I was going to say we just did 60.
Yeah.
So, so really, my hope is to have you, Carlo, throw questions at Rebecca and Bre.
Sure.
And kind of basically get your guys' really early career thoughts on the way we do things. And this is pretty much process focused. Obviously culture is probably going to be a part of it too, but we're pretty unique on both of those fronts, and basically just see where it goes.
Yeah.
And I'm going to push buttons and listen.
Yeah, that's fine. So obviously Demaline kind of has the most amount of experience in the last 3 weeks, but I think a good way of starting it is actually something you and I had talked about.
I think I know where you're going.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was basically coming into it and talking to Chris and saying that, like, all right, today's the day. Today I'm starting at PAW Health, and I don't know, maybe I don't know if this is going to turn out the way that I thought it was going to, and I think that's actually a perception that a lot of people have, just in listening to the podcast, and it's like, well, it can't be everything that they're talking about. And of course for me, I'm like, well, it's not everything because we're not perfect, but we're perfect, but we are. But I think to at least start out and just saying, because for you, it's going to be kind of a short amount of experience, and then we'll kind of take that and build upon with, at least what Demaline's kind of seen over the last couple of weeks. But yeah, take me kind of through that just little talk path again, and just sort of what you thought, kind of coming into it. Because I think ultimately what it's beset in is our overwhelming disappointment. Is just as a whole, whether it be disappointment with the way in which we're educated, or the expectations set there, or even our experiences then within clinical practice, and just be like, all right, well, this is another one, and they're just going to talk a big game, and like every other corporation out there, who pumps themselves up, and is it that great?
Yeah, so I'm sitting in your guys' parking lot on the first day because I got here really early because I was like, what if I can't find it? Like, what if I don't know where it is?
Yeah.
And I'm FaceTiming my fiance, and we're sitting there, and he's like, how you doing? I'm like, I am really anxious. Like, my heart is beating really fast. And he's like, why? It's going to be great. And I'm like, yeah, well, it could be really great. Like, today I could love it. It could be amazing. It could be everything I've hoped. or I'm going to go in there and I'm going to hate it all. I'm going to hate every aspect of everything there, and I'm going to have to stay the whole summer.
I was going to say it's a summer decision,
and
right?
I'm going to have to be there for I'm here for like 9 or 10 weeks or something, and I'm just going to be miserable. But I talked all this big game and all this smack about how like amazing it is, so I'm going to have to just like grin and bear it and just like, welp, I'm here. And I mean, that's definitely not how it went. Like, I was done. I did my onboarding, and then at the end of the first day, as I think when we were talking, and I was like, nope, I like it. I like it a lot. Like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm really happy that it wasn't the other way.
Yeah.
Like, but there were only 2 ways it was gonna go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't going to be in between.
That's how people usually describe whether or not they like me. It only goes 2 ways. It's love or hate. That's it. There's no in between. So that's the one part of the perspective that I like as far as the build or the organization we built is still like, you're going to love it or hate it.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, so I mean, to even kind of build upon that, you guys actually kind of have very similar experiences because you had worked at the same clinic at the same time as we were.
Last
right?
summer.
Yeah. So, I guess to not necessarily call out any one particular practice, but, you know, I guess to kind of build upon what she said, what is kind of a standout item in the last, almost near 3 weeks that you've kind of noticed, 1, 2, multiple, whatever, but just as far as the like things to take away from what we've shown thus far, because 3 weeks is a very short amount of time. So the impact I would say that you would have received in 3 weeks is probably going to be the big highlights of sort of what is different, you know, because there's little things, but.
Yeah, I think for me, it's initially the trust and in the hands-on skill for me, because I was thinking about this last night too. I was thinking about how things are different and whatnot. And I think at past practices for me, even last summer one, they all want you to be like that day one ready to be the greatest veterinarian when you come out. And of course we want to be,
right.
But then they're like, you just have to do it. But then when we're in school, they're like, oh, well, you can do that later. You'll get better at that later. I'm like,
we'll teach you that next semester.
Right. And I'm like,
next
if you just teach me now, I can be that much of a better veterinarian when I get out and get that much better at serving patients. Like, it'll be so much easier if you just teach me now.
Yeah.
But a lot of them just push that off. But when I've been here the last 3 weeks, I've been so like blown away about the ability to just get hands-on, get surgical experiences. Like, that alone has been super, super awesome for me, because that's an area that I really wanted to get into, but it's hard because not everyone trusts you enough to get that. So I've just very much been like wallowing in the trust. And even on the floor when I come in and help out like the CVDs and things, like Molly, she is like, oh, place that catheter, go get some blood, and I'm like, done. Like, you got it. Like, anything else you want, I got it. Because other practices, I feel like it's a culture and a mindset of like, I don't know, which some of it is fair if you don't know us, like that's fair. Everyone comes from different backgrounds. But really, it's just the environment of trust and a culture of success here for me that has really blown away my expectations that I already had high. But my expectations that I've been here, and the just sheer experiences that I've been able to have hands-on has been way more higher than I've ever gotten in any other practice, because there was a trust and wonderful, successful culture built.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, because you had kind of spoken to that as well when it wasn't just that which was extended to you, but you said it, the feel where in other practices you've been in, it was almost like they were ready to pounce, you know, like vultures or, you know, whatever it is, like just really looking and waiting. And it's like, oh, you made a mistake. Now you're done with that. See, I knew you didn't know how to do it.
And that follows you for days, months, years. Like, well, you made that one mistake, and I'm going to keep it on for you forever. It's so awful to be in that position. I feel, unfortunately, that's a lot of cultures at lots of practices, and I've felt it multiple times. And that's, we kind of like embrace it and like Molly kind of embodies it, where it's like, go get this done. Okay, because and that's where a lot of that trust comes from, is it's like, if like we trust that if you can't, or if we trust that if you don't know how, that's where the trust comes from, is it's like, well, just say something, you know, because that was actually very early, actually. I think when we started talking about culture development years ago, is it was like, we just have to be willing to be like, I don't know, you know, which is a really hard hurdle for people to come over. And it's actually kind of, you know, at least in some way, shape, or form, fortuitous, because I think when we look at our 4 core values of trust, respect, now collaboration and accountability, I don't think we actually give merit to how much we actually have built trust within the team. And that's why I really enjoyed kind of getting that feedback, because I was just like, I think it was like one day I was like, I hope you know, like, I just placed the catheter, and like they were all super chill about it, and we're like, you got this, and we're like, cool, like there was no like, oh, you're gonna fuck that up, like waiting for it. And
Yeah.
I think the part is when you ridicule someone too, and you want them just to say, hey, like I can't do this, but when you constantly ridicule them, they don't want to come to you and be like,
correct,
I just messed up again, or like another strike against me kind of thing. So it all fits together.
Yeah, and that for me, and like I said, that's why it was, and actually what kind of prompted Ben and I talking about is that was like the really refreshing thing, because we're just in it, you know. So it's like there is a part of us that we are in some way naive to the persistent existence of that type of culture. We know that it exists, but I think where my brain is at with it, like I don't even understand why. Like, why does it still persist? Like, it just is like, this is how to do it. Like, why aren't we just doing that?
I mean, I could tell you why. Because I've seen what happens if you don't.
I will say that that was the reason why I came here. So if you guys don't know probably a ton about my history, but working with the consulting company that I was at, I got the chance to work basically on the teams, whether very directly or very proximate, for probably somewhere between 15 and 20 businesses over the course of like 3 or 4 years. And
varied businesses.
Very, very.
Yeah, like we were the only veterinary contract.
Yeah. And there was another one that was a potential and never turned into anything. But manufacturing, cranberry farming. That's a whole thing up here.
Yeah, it is. Cranberry farms are awesome if you go see them. But
they're super cool. Yeah. But lots of different stuff.
Yeah.
And I always kind of had it in the back of my head, like, I don't really know if this is what I want to do, and always just being analytical of my position in life, right? And then there was I think it was this last meeting that we had at Catch-All for a planning meeting. I was like, so is this legit?
Yeah.
Are you just blowing smoke up my ass? Because this all sounds great in this office every other week, but like, what does this actually mean?
I remember that meeting.
Yeah. And then I was like, is it successful? He's like, yes. It's like I like it, too much. Like, we're too busy.
Yes.
And then I did a working interview on a Friday night. I was like, I don't know if I want to have anything to do with this, but I'm gonna come live this on a Friday night.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, so it does work.
Yeah.
I see it now. And then that was when the idea of basically putting a microphone in front of you was just like, well, this is the plan now.
Yeah.
This is happening.
And now that I've been here for over 2 years, I'm even to the point of starting to take things for granted. Like, I can just be Ben. Like, there's no thinking when I'm behaving or like why I'm here. And I think that's a big thing that it is really easy to take for granted. And I think you guys are kind of highlighting on that as well. So I'm glad that I was able to see it from an outsider's perspective. But even now that it's like a really like big thing, it's pretty cool to have a continuous naive critique essentially come in. So I guess for the sake of the audience, Rebecca, everyone's has had a chance to meet Bre, but just a little bit about yourself, kind of where you came from, where you're headed, and then we'll kind of pick up from there too.
Yeah, so I'm Rebecca. I'm a third year now. It's really weird to say. I still like
got a heart attack.
I know, right? Like a little mini one, just a little mini one. So I'm in class with Bre, and then Amy's downstairs on the floor today.
Yep.
And I'm from the Metro Detroit area, and unlike everybody else I know in the veterinary profession that's like, oh, I wanted to be a vet since I was 4 years old. I was 17, and my mom was like, you're applying to school. Like, you know what you want to do? And I was like, no, I have literally no idea. No idea. And I was working at a doggy daycare at the time, and then we had a dog attack. And then I got to like work with a vet, and I was like, well, that's kind of cool. And then just full-blown committed, because I don't do anything half-assed, like nothing.
Full send.
So yeah, completely. And everybody was like, like, you're going to Albion for undergrad. Like, they have a really good pre-vet program, but most people drop it. Like, they just become a doctor. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. So I had my undergrad at Albion, and then I'm focused small animal. And during my interviews, I was like, if I decide I fall in love with cows, I fall in love with cows. That's great. That did not happen. The cows, they're very cute.
Yeah.
Over there.
Yeah.
They can stay far away from me.
Yeah.
And so then now we've had like our first 3 years, and I've worked at a ton of different, like, small animal, but all of them have been, like, GP based. So I had one during undergrad where I started shadowing, and he let me do tons of stuff that I was probably not supposed to do. Like, I learned a lot.
Perfect. Yeah. Get your hands in there.
Right.
And then I worked at a clinic part-time and did some exotic animals and was like, well, that's really cool. I don't think I want to do that every day, but I mean, it's cool.
Yeah.
And it was like an amazing experience. And then I've been doing like ER shifts at MSU, but it's very different than here. It's not like, I'm more of like an assistant, like I stock stuff and not like super hands-on other than like restraining patients. And so last summer I was supposed to go to an ER in Grand Rapids, and then COVID happened. And so then that didn't happen because I talked to Donna Harris, who's one of our like amazing mentor professors at MSU. And she was like, why don't you do ER? Like, it sounds like you would maybe like that. And I was like, well, yeah, I feel like I'm going to get really bored doing GP. Like, I like it, but maybe not. I don't know. So I know, Bre, you've had a lot of, like, ER stuff coming in. And I was like, we're going to see.
We're going to live it.
Yeah, like, again, I'm either going to love it or I'm going to hate it, and then we'll know.
Yeah.
And that's great. And so I'm here now because I sent a very moderately desperate email kind of to Carlo in December. And... and was like, I'm just like, I'm not having fun in the profession. Like, I'm sitting at my desk for 14 hours a day, not talking to anyone other than like text messages. And we're not like we're in class, but not really like in class. And I was like, all the clinics I work at, like, I just feel like disparaged and like I'm not allowed to be me or allowed to succeed or even set up to succeed in the way that I should. Like, can I come for the summer? And he responded at like 3 a.m. per usual and was like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So,
so you're trying the shoes on.
Yeah.
You're trying the ER shoes on this summer. So I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I assumed that you were somewhat experienced.
No,
in that.
he hooked me with the Kool-Aid through the house mentorship system.
Right.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
because I met you guys, it was like last January.
At NBC.
Yeah, well, it was the VBMA talk before NBC.
Yep.
And then came and was like, so this is really cool. I can't come out for the summer because at that point I'd already had the ER job lined up in Grand Rapids. And then I'm, being a house captain as one does, they kind of were like, oh, you're doing the thing now. You got to meet with Riolo. And I was like, who the crap is that?
Right.
I don't know who that is.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, he gives us like his whole meeting and everything. And I'm thinking, and I'm like, this sounds really familiar.
Yeah.
Like, really familiar.
I've heard this before.
Like, I've heard this whole thing. So then afterwards, I'm like looking through all my like VBMA notes, and I was like, that's why.
That's him.
That's why, right
Even
there.
though you weren't even there.
Yeah.
You were there by proxy.
Yeah, no, he wasn't even there, which is probably why it didn't register.
Probably,
but and then I was hooked. I was like, okay, like full send house mentorship system, like full send. I'm gonna send this email before I decide against sending it, and we're gonna see what happens. And then he responded like a day later, and I had to tell my fiance like, oh, I think I'm going to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And
At least for a summer.
Yeah, and he was like, what? Because I didn't even tell him I sent the email. Because I didn't think anything was going to happen.
Right,
and then it did.
Right.
So I'm here trying on all the shoes. Like the ER shoes, the PAW shoes, cultural and everything like that.
Nice.
And I'm loving it.
Yeah.
So
Good. Yeah. No, yeah. And as always, it's a pleasure having you both, and I think, for me, just always being very lofty, in thinking about, PAW and long term, whenever I hear about like GP, ER, so on and so forth, like, I don't think those are actually going to exist in the future.
oh, that'd be so great.
Like, no joke.
Yeah.
Like, I
like the distinction between
the distinction.
Sure.
Yes. I legitimately feel that what we're doing from a triage standpoint is groundbreaking enough that it will change the way that business is done. And to even say like, well, I don't know that I could do GP all the time. It's like, I am not sure that GPs are even GPs. I'm not even sure that ERs are even ERs, and that's for us. that was actually what kind of birthed kind of the idea of sort of just 24-hour all care. Is, I mean, back, and this is now, I mean, we can talk about COVID now, but when I got out of school, that was 2006, we had the economic crash of 2010. So for us, you know, that was the beginning of my career, was really having to deal with an economic crisis. And what I started to see bleeding in at 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, is it was more, you know, unvaccinated patients, uncared for, you know, no one's on preventative, you know, and a lot of that just birthed out of people working 9-to-5 jobs, and they couldn't take time off because we were already in the economic crisis that we were. So it's kind of working within people's budgets and so on and so forth. So I mean, that was a huge sort of impactful time, because when I got out of school at 2006, really we were at like the height, you know, at least pre-economic drop. So there was really a lot that was happening in the industry, and you just pretty much could do whatever you wanted at that time. But now coming out of that, you know, 10, 15 years later, and seeing kind of the state of affairs that the industry is in now, especially now knowing that a lot of our practitioners need to retire. You know, they are ending their physical ability. Yes, they are ready to do it. That's where, like I said, I think I am not sure that in that traditional sense that it's going to exist anymore. And I could just be completely tunnel visioned on it. But I guess that's then kind of my question to y'all, is saying, you know, for the 3 weeks and for the couple of days, just to kind of know, like, I mean, we obviously, you know, Rebecca, we worked a lot on the house system. We talked about a lot of different things,
a lot of
you know,
stuff,
and like it did, you know, at least so far has come to fruition for you. But I guess that's sort of the next question that I would have to pose is, like, do you think that it is both replicable and scalable?
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. I mean, urgent care for me, like exactly what
Yeah.
basically PAW does is urgent care, seeing the GP things,
Yes.
but also seeing the like hit by cars, the crazy like bear attacks up here. That's a thing.
It's a thing.
That's a thing. Okay,
That's
yo,
a
just you
very
wait.
real thing.
Yes, bear attacks and things like that. Like those things happen regardless. Like when you're in, I worked emergency pretty recently, and when we get the ear infections, people were just like, oh, I don't want to see the ear infection. But then when you work in GP, they're like, oh my God, a hit by car's coming in. We can't take that. So it's like, yes, you can. It'll be actually beneficial if you do. And urgent care is what I want to do in the future. Like that is my goal, because I just think it makes sense. And it's definitely, I mean, as you guys are doing, and I do think it's like for the foreseeable future is definitely the way to go. Because like, if a hit by car shows up at your door, you're going to ship them away like to go travel 30 minutes, like when you could just deal with it then. And if you have the staff, you set up for the urgent care, you make everything available to serve the patient as you should. When it gets there, it just works that way. And I definitely do, to answer the question straight on, yes. The answer is yes. And I hope and do foresee that it will be the future.
I hope so. I hope so as well. And I guess to even kind of, so let's take those two scenarios of the like ear infections versus the hit by cars. I am interested in your perspective on our case handling time. So yes, you're going to, because I think that's going to be the big question with triage, right? Is wait times. But as far as, you know, our ability, because a little of this is built into nonlinear triage. So, and I've kind of shown you a lot of that, at least in, you know, a little bit of time that we've had, is like, all right, from a case handling standpoint, how, if you look at that urgent care and saying just whatever walks in we can deal with, have you found that we have gotten substantially delayed in one particular case type than another? Or does it seem like there is pretty much a candor, kind of a movement, kind of a process to the whole thing?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I can pick out, and something you guys have already picked up on, is the pre-scheduled like wellness vaccines and things, like because you tell the caregivers when they show up, like, hey, like you guys are pre-scheduled, but there may be a wait. But no matter how many times you tell a caregiver that, when they have their appointment at 4:00, but then we have 3 hit by cars or whatever it may be, even if it's something very simple but ends up taking longer, they are suddenly upset because they made that appointment on purpose to be there. So that's kind of the thing I've seen, is that it's on our side, we can't do that. Like we have to do by triage basis. I'm sorry, but that pre-scheduled has to wait. But the caregivers don't see that. So that's like the one thing that I've been thinking about too, because that's something you guys have realized, like, do we get rid of that? Do we not? Because it's hard when you use the term appointment with caregivers, because that is their time and they're expecting to be seen then. And there's some giveaway here and there, but when it extends upon hours, like that's really hard for them to understand. And I get it. I do. So That's the one thing that I've really noticed is just like the pre-scheduled things sometimes become an issue because you can't, we don't know what's going to come in the door. That's the fun part of emergency. We don't know what's going to come in the door. So you have to kind of play it by ear, but us playing it by ear is not the same as the caregivers playing it by ear.
Correct.
So that's the one thing. Other than that though, I think everything runs very smoothly, staying on top of the triggers. Every time there's a new triage, you move up a level. And I haven't really seen it, but I've heard that it happens anyways, is that the front staff will help call and give updates to all the caregivers like, hey, by the way, we just had this come in, we have to bump you up unfortunately. But it's been really smooth. Like when you guys the caregivers come, you say, hey, up front we got wait times, do you want to go? And they say, yep, I'm gonna go. That's been really awesome because in the past I worked at an emergency practice and we had 5-6 hour wait times. Well, that's not done. So then you get angry people, you get the bad reviews, you get the all, it goes on and snowballs. So overall, I think it's great. It works really well, but those are the areas I think that from what I see that need to be maybe, I don't want to say worked on, but have some attention to, just because like that's what's going to get you is when caregivers get angry.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, as we do, I mean, Dr. Katie, she actually really wasn't a huge fan of the idea of pre-scheduled. And I think part of the compromise was in this idea where it was like, all right, well, but if we have them way ahead in the triage order, if they have to come back for a recheck urine or something like that. And I think our new solution, of course, is to completely get rid of the idea of pre-scheduled. Which, I mean, we talked about at one of our last meetings, but I think that there is a benefit to client facing and what they hear and what they know and the expectation that you set, and then sort of how you run operations. And I think that's where I was having a kind of like almost a mental block, on like how is it though if I have a case that I know I just need to get a urine on to get this recheck thing, like I should have that luxury of just quick zipping them through, but that's more of like a back end process, but you're exactly right. I don't know if it's going to be the perfect solution, but it's certainly going to be something to try. And if it doesn't work, we'll find out why it didn't work. Yeah,
and certainly having like multiple doctors on a shift, because when it's just like one doctor, that's really hard to be able to decipher like, what do I do first? Do I do this pre-scheduled or do I go into surgery, this emergency surgery now? So when you have two doctors, you can say, hey, go grab that pre-scheduled, get it sent through, do this. Well, I'm going to go hop into surgery. So that's certainly helpful. And I've seen both times. I've seen it when it's just Riola running the show and when there are two doctors kind of playing the field, making sure everything happens when it needs to happen. So
I will say and we've talked about this on the podcast a number of times, that's the value of having dedicated front staff, because you have to have people that like know enough about the process to be like, I can tell someone what's happening without actually telling them what's happening, because if I get too in deep, they're not going to understand it anymore. So like, yes, I could absolutely walk somebody through the way that our triage system works point by point, but that's not going to make a lick of sense to somebody that's never stepped into a treatment area. So that there is absolutely a tightrope walk on that, and the value of that position is something that you can't take for granted, regardless of where you are geographically or anything like that, because it is hard.
I know. I think too often people do take it for granted and don't realize how important that role is, and that is your main connection to the caregivers. And if they can foresee like, oh, this is gonna be bad, or hey, I'm gonna just give this person a heads up that it's gonna be another half hour because they just told me they were like waiting for something. Whatever the story may be. So absolutely agree.
It is an art form.
Yes. Yeah, so I think one of the other things that we try to do internally kind of builds off of the importance of that caregiver support role is the idea of toppled hierarchy. So so part of it is, again, the trust component where it's like, just go do that phlebotomy or whatever it is, or get this done. But I would say past experiences versus sort of what we have here. How do you think that hierarchical approach or lack thereof I guess integrates with our process, but more importantly, kind of has an impact on culture? So I guess, again, just kind of drawing from those past experiences where you may have been in a very structured hierarchical setting, and sort of the impact that had as far as flexibility. You had mentioned individuality, how you think that it's like, so I guess that would actually be one thing to build on, is saying, I wasn't really allowed to be me, or I wasn't really allowed to be who I was, or I wasn't really able to grow in this environment, because of the barriers placed on me being an individual. I guess, you know, some limited experience, at least in the last, you know, couple of days, but yeah.
So it definitely, I felt it most at the second clinic I worked at. That was like our exotic and like small like dogs and cats, but it was a lot exotic. And I mean, it was very clear. Like you had your front staff who were like bottom of the totem pole. Like they just got walked over all the time. And that was the one clinic I didn't do like any reception, any like caregiver support role at, and was very, very happy to like not have to do
engage,
that. And then you had your like assistant-y role, but then there was like a clear hierarchy within that. And then you had your
interdepartmental hierarchy.
Yes. And then you had your technicians, and then you had someone who was not labeled as the head technician, but very clearly like what they say went. And then you had your like newer doctors, and then you had the owner. And I mean, like what she said went. Like it did not matter. And it was very much like I see that there is a problem. I acknowledge that like that went terribly, and I'm going to blame you. You did it wrong. And I'm like, oh, well, can we fix it? And she's like, no, you did it wrong, and you're not going to do it again.
Sure. Like not be allowed to attempt that task again?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Or
like,
not allowed to make the mistake again.
No, like you will never perform that task again, and we will not acknowledge until some point when I need to bring up that you have failed to disparage you, that you like, no, you just will. I will never ask you to do it. Don't volunteer for that task.
Yeah, and that to me just sounds exhausting. Like I'm not from.
I was only there. I worked there over the summer, and then I worked 3 weekends, and then I said, I'm done. This isn't worth it. I was coming home from work in tears and exhausted, and I was just like, why? Yeah. Like, don't ruin what I love about this profession. And I'm like always asking like, why? Like, can I learn? And that was just not encouraged there. And I mean, here, and it was all appointments, like 100% appointment based, and you were assigned a doctor, and the doctor had assigned appointments, and that's how the schedule was. And if a doctor was falling behind, that sucks to be them. Me and my tech are leaving early. We got through all our appointments.
Sure.
I'm sorry that you didn't get through yours. And I was just like, we are a team here. Why are we fighting each other for? I mean, like it was like we were fighting for commissions. Except for as an assistant, I don't have a part of that battle. But I'm being like tailed along behind like my little like army, and I'm like, no, I don't need this. And then being here, it's so different. Like you're not like in your triage base. What I've noticed is there's no like possessiveness. Like that's my case, and like my assistant is doing that case, and don't take it away from them or anything like that. Like here, it is very much like, oh, like you, like I'll go do that. Like you have every single task is something that can be delegated, and that like that's amazing. Just to be like, okay, like we're gonna break it up, and like, okay, you're not strong in that. We don't have time to teach you that right now, but we will. Like you're going to be stronger in it. Yeah. And then something you're strong at. Okay, like who can you teach? Yeah. And who can you help? And like let's bring everybody up. Let's make the whole team better. Yeah. And and I think even with that a lot of it, you know, of course, culture management for one, but it also sort of came out of necessity as well. So if we have, you know, 45 different things that we need to do with one particular case, I would even before PAW was PAW, I always hated that one doctor, one case, one tech, one case. This is mine from beginning to end.
Which we had kind of accidentally for a while. Yeah. Like we just like fell into it, and there was a pretty active process to get out of it.
Well, that's what I'm trying to drive at. It's like that again, and I think a part of it actually comes down to the respect and the trust thing, which again we've worked substantially on, but may not have really recognized the amount of work that we put into it because we have more like in-hand resources for collaboration, in-hand resources for accountability, but we don't have like in-hand resources for trust and respect. But it's more of like the policy and the process and the way that we do it dictates trust and it mandates respect.
Yeah, I feel like if you don't have like that, I mean, you guys have talked about it. If someone doesn't fit those values, they very quickly, they usually choose to leave because it's not something that that benefits them. They can't break into that system.
You're right. Yeah.
And
benefits who? Them. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when you
self-driven
have,
principle. Or purpose.
Yeah. When you have this like process set in place, and when everybody on the team is on the same page, it makes sense that the trust and the accountability, it's always something you have to work on and something that you have to like be at least a little bit cognizant of.
Yeah.
But once you put in that initial work, I mean, you keep the good and the bad kind of, you know,
show themselves out.
Yeah. For me, I think something that I've really, really appreciated over the last 3 weeks of seeing is how much you utilize that hierarchy or hierarchical order, because like, I think it's a main reason why you get to see so many patients as you do, and you can kick out 65 patients in a day. Is for this reason, because you have you have technicians who are able to do things. They can go prep for surgery by themselves, get it into the surgery room by themselves. There's no like a whole 5-person team doing this. Like they're very efficient what they do, and they're confident what they do. And even just like all the euthanasias that come through, like that's a technician. Like they handle that from start to finish. That is huge, because there are so many times that we get caught up. Doctors get caught up in different appointments, talking with caregivers for when you need to, talking with them. But what I've just really appreciated is just like the confidence and trust, as we keep talking about, that we have in every single order, whether that's the MSSs or the CVTs. Like everyone is confident in their abilities and to help each other doing that. And that is just absolutely huge, because we're not tied up in all these tasks where it's like, oh, I can't do this. Oh, I need another hand. I need this other hand. And then you have 5 individuals with one patient, and we're like, where are we at here, guys? The doctor is still waiting to see 5 more patients. So I think that's just been huge for me, seeing that over the last 3 weeks, is how quickly we're able to see patients, because you can bounce from like, oh, get into the patient. Let me like do an exam real quick on this patient. Send it back. Get another exam. Send it back. Like that is huge, because they are able to go. They do all the injections. They do the sub-Q fluids. They do all the treatments that need to be done. You can just do your doctor things as it should be. Because that's what we go to school for is to do doctor things. And when you can leave all the other things to the staff who want to do that, love to do that, went to school for that, we can go ahead and do our job and be the best efficient team possible.
Yeah, no, and that's, you're exactly right, kind of breaking down each of those tasks. Because when we do our performance reviews, we often talk about time allocation and usage. So time allocation and usage lends the opportunity for people to be slow but really good, or fast and a little clunky, you know. So you have to kind of look at, as a team, what do you actually value? Do you value kind of the slow, steady, makes no mistakes, or do you value just boom, 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 rush, 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 rush? And I guess, you know, my perspective is that we try to have that balance between it. But even to kind of lead into that, so we had, whatever it was, 63 or 65 patients that day. It was a lot, yeah. You know, so I think in the time that you guys have had, you know, it's just a short period of time, and I of course I know the answer to this, but have you at any point in time felt so overwhelmed that you thought it was like the tasks were unattainable? Because I think what a lot of people feel. So I overtalked to you, but yes, no.
No. The answer is no. And actually, because my expectation, one of the things that actually was not true. I came to PAW Health because we talk about how like, oh, it's just crazy here. Carla's always like, it's crazy. It's crazy. See so many things. It's always gonna be like this. And I'm like, okay, like let's do it. I'm ready. Like let's go ahead strong. So like from day 1, I was like, all right, where's the rush? Like here we go. Where are we at? And it was like day 4. Day 5, and I was like, what? Like, is this, like, what's happening? It doesn't feel busy, even though we're seeing so many patients. And I was actually, like, helping Kim with the dental.
Oh, sure.
And I was like, do you ever, like, feel overwhelmed? Like, I keep waiting for that crazy rush Carla talks about, and it hasn't been here yet. And she was like, actually, I've been here for a month and a half, and I've never felt overwhelmed. Because I only get assigned one task at a time, and I can do that task well. I'm doing this dental right now, but I don't have to worry about the 3 things that just came in the door, because my focus is right here. And I really, like, was like, wow. That's nice. Because I was telling Rebecca too, I was like, yes, we're like pause an emergency practice, urgent care.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like an emergency practice
it
all the
doesn't
time.
have the same feel at all.
Yeah, like it's just different. It's structured and well organized
yes.
is the reason why,
Yeah.
but it's so different.
Yeah.
But no, I have never felt overwhelmed or that like it's just unaccomplishable.
Yeah, and that's actually, that gives credit to Dr. Katie, because that's one of her big things in the idea of multitasking. Like, everyone thinks in order to multitask, you have to do these 17 things simultaneously. And it's like, well, no one can do those 17 things simultaneously. The idea is break it down into its consumable parts and then do it in appropriate order. And then so that's where, like you said, so again, kind of, credit where it's due on that. But that's where we kind of started to talk about the triage and delegating out each part and saying, we have some people that are really good at making estimates, but really clunk through the phone calls on getting the estimates approved. And even as a whole, as a team, we have like your MSS, they present estimates 8 different ways, so it's a matter of being like, all right, if we have these individual delegatable tasks, it's like, yeah, maybe these people, we need to work on their talk path, but they're really good at computer systems, load them up with the computer system stuff, and so like you said, that's just
Utilizing those strengths.
yeah, really trying to utilize those strengths, and a lot of it actually comes out of the advanced assessment. The TriCore is like really understanding like where individuals may end up having some of those like just mechanical reservations, like I have, I'm anxious talking to people, or whatever that is. That has been at least beneficial in a couple different ways. Screening for sure.
It's created our language
Sure.
because we don't necessarily look at data points how they exist like day to day, point to point. But what it's done is it gave us a language to work with. I actually just did a debrief this morning. It was like talking about how what that data does is it take, because communication can be very volatile and very emotional, right? And what it does is it gives you words to understand it and takes it out of the center of your brain and puts it in the front. And we don't necessarily think about, like Emily, we've used her as an example before. Like, she's very much that like slow and steady wins the race, and she never makes a mistake. No. She's not the fastest person in the world, but she doesn't have to repeat anything. No. And we don't necessarily think about it in the fact that she's a high SC behavioral pattern and her motivators are what they are, and she's very practical in the way that she thinks and all that sort of stuff. But we have the context, right, and we can appreciate the fact that, yes, Emily is very unique, and like that's Emily, and we know what Emily does, and when we need Emily to do what Emily can do, she's going to do it better than anybody else. Yes. And when we need a politician, we're going to get Carlo, or we're going to get Ben, or if we need somebody to be super direct, we're going to get Katie, or we're going to get Molly. And we can pull our different tools from different people. And actually, something that's interesting, because I actually just went through some different stuff on that, is when you can behave in a way that is within your natural pattern, it actually energizes you. And when you're energized, you energize the people that are around you. And it just kind of, it becomes a self-fulfilling process without really needing accessibility to the data.
Yeah.
So.
And that's actually where I think a part of me falls on the scalability of it, right? Yep. So when I, speaking about the things of the second practice you were at and kind of that culture there, yes, absolutely, as an employee going through that, it's exhausting. For me, I was actually taking the perspective of that lead veterinarian and business owner. I'm like, can you actually imagine the amount of energy and effort that goes into maintaining that type of an environment? It's honest to God, like to have that much absolute control over every single thing that happens in the practice it's like, but how much energy is that taking out? And I guess my bigger concern, like to me that seems exhausting. I guess my bigger concern would be is if that was actually what that person fed on. That's actually disgusting.
I would bet that is not what that person fed on.
Yeah.
Because typically that's going to be a stress response to low quality for somebody that's like super detail oriented.
Okay. Yeah.
And they just like they start to grab onto the reins, and then somebody else screws something up, so they take that on, and then they take something else, and then they
keep holding on.
It's like, no, this is mine.
Yeah.
Because I can't trust anybody else to do this, and it's my reputation, and it's my pocketbook, and talking with what we talked about last Friday about how, like, if we walk into this industry with the mindset that everyone that's around us is competition and not other care providers to collaborate with, well, if they're competition, I could lose this person because this other schmo made a mistake that's in my clinic, and I don't really trust them. Why am I paying them? They can't do anything right. It takes 5 monkeys to put in a light bulb or to prep a surgery. But it's just it's a stress response to a lack of trust.
And that's funny because the entire time you're saying, I'm like ready to get out of my chair, because the last practice I was at, it's absolutely like to a T everything that you have said. I've watched the technicians who do have that mindset where I just can't trust anybody, and they have even used the verbiage to say, well, that's my patient, like don't touch my patient, like that are in there. And that was always heartbreaking to me, because I'm like, well, I just don't understand why you don't want your team to grow. Like if they want to grow, they want to see themselves succeed, they want to help the team as a whole, why don't you want to do that? If they just can't trust. And once they have that and it fuels them, they're like, I just can't get out of this box. And I watched that so many times at my last practice amongst like multiple veterinarians and technicians just grab onto that, exactly what you described. And it's just watching them go through that stress alone stressed me outside. And then you have those breakouts where they're like, I have to go take a smoke. I have to go take a smoke. Like, and then they're taking like 5 smoke breaks in an hour, and you're like, are you okay?
Right.
Like if you just let me like go draw that blood, or I can even like go do something for you, I think you'd feel a lot better, but they just can't let that go.
Yeah, so I guess to even come the other way with that, now I'm not saying work, I'm not saying hard work or effort, but I mean, to think about that type of individual and that type of practice, like how casual, because you haven't attended kind of the Zoom meetings yet, but like from a leadership standpoint and from an administration standpoint, and that's what, like I said, thinking about just having that much control of everything is exhausting. How do you think we function at that leadership level, as far as like, does it seem very casual? Does it seem very structured? Does it seem very controlling? To say like, well, here's sort of this, does it seem like, I guess, how can I put this? My perception from the outside looking in is it would be flying by the seat of our pants. However, but it is very well thought out. It is very articulate. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is, how much effort does it look like goes into the process that would appear to go against our grain? Like, does it seem like we are putting in so much effort to get this stuff done, and that we're so exhausted in trying to come up with solutions that it seems unattainable, and we have to have control over all these things, because if we don't have control over all these things, it's going to unravel? Is that how it seems, or would you say as an alternative there's a different perspective on how we seem to move through leadership and management?
I think there's totally a balance there. I don't think that it's like you guys are so exhausted. Like, obviously you talked about this morning, you're like, you saw that list of things I have to do in like the next 5 days. I was maybe a little stressed right now, but I have come to appreciate the art and detail of Microsoft Teams through these leadership meetings. Like, I can tell there is a lot of thought and delegation that goes into creating, like, here are my tasks, and even just writing out like, you send this to this person, this is going to send out to this person. That is really helpful. A little tedious sometimes. I'm like, wow, okay. But that is so helpful. And I do see all the background. I don't think it's overly where you're not like, just so, like, I have to have all this control, because you delegate that control to other places. So you're not taking that all on as 1 or 2 individuals or 3 individuals that are at the leadership meeting. But delegating that amongst all the team is super helpful. And then even showed me that map yesterday, that crazy spider map of all the leaders that you guys have at every section. Yes, whatever. Looks like a crazy map to me.
Everything is a crazy map.
This is fair. This is Carlos.
It's a string board.
But even just seeing that there is tons of work and detail that goes into creating the environment that you guys have, and it's absolutely working. And I think it's structured, it works out well, but it's also not to the point where it's like, well, if this task doesn't get done, my entire like plan is skewed. I'm never going to get this over with, and we need to ridicule this person because they didn't complete their task. It's just, okay, well, why didn't you complete your task? Like, okay, like, let's just move the date back if we can. Like, that's okay. But just seeing like Microsoft Teams, like, that's new to me, but I was like, wow, this is like all the folders that you guys have, every task and everyone has like their logins that go on there. I think there's a really great balance overall.
Yeah, I would say honestly, because when Ben and I and Katie and Annie, we started working on the strategic planning side, it was super manual.
Oh, it was all paper.
It was all paper.
100% paper.
And it was but I think what's fair is you'll have to tell me what book it's from, but it's the idea that technology should only ever enhance.
Yeah.
It's not to replace what you're doing.
Yep.
It's to enhance what you're doing. So that's why it's like you're not buying the latest app. You're not paying for this brand new shiny thing that you get sold at a convention. You do this and it's going to fix everything. It's like you really have to fundamentally develop that process, and that's where with Ben, he's been going so just hard into marketing. It was, I think, just a couple months, like maybe a month and a half ago, you were like, do I need to attend those meetings? And I'm like, we got the tools, man. Like like the tools are there. Like we can continue to talk about the tools and like probably literally waste your time. I mean, just because we have them. Right. And I think the other thing, and actually after this, I'm going to be recording something for,
That's
or is that tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow. Thank you. Tomorrow I'm recording things on actual how we do strategic planning, a little bit on how we head to the stuff for the VBMA, but the idea is that even sort of within that, everyone's going to kind of use Teams a little bit different. I mean, Ben kind of runs his a little bit different than Rachel runs hers, than, sort of me and mine, but again, so, I think that's, it has been a really, really nice piece of software, truthfully.
Yeah. So the book, if you guys are readers, it's the red one right there. It's Good to Great.
Oh, that's right.
Jim Collins. It's Rule 6 out of 6. It's technology is an accelerator. So, you're absolutely right. And actually, I've lived it where, you try to find a software to solve this problem that you have. And if you ever get into that process, what you'll find is no software ever actually solves the whole problem. Yeah. And, but that then pushed me into solving the problem and then needing to create software at times, which is a huge pain in the ass, i.e. our website that's going to be live soon.
Yeah, sure.
But also, it's something that like you'll get sold if you don't know it on these like ready-made solutions and like these like packages from consulting companies that will solve all of your problems. And it's like, no, it won't, because you've never been here before and you don't know my problem. Now we might be able to do that, but the thing is, if we like, because actually I don't remember who I was talking to, but I was talking about like we could sell a PAW Health consulting company. I don't think it would actually be that hard to put together a package of things and processes, and we already have the book, right? And just to really get this out and make it a saleable item. But here's the thing. You take this and you plant it in Grand Rapids, and you plant it in Detroit, and you plant it in Boston or wherever, right? It's going to be this much difference, and it's going to be like, why did I spend that money? Because this little bit of difference that's really, really early on has completely morphed all of the rest of these tools. And it's really about the critical thinking and taking, because all we're really talking about is concepts. And we've just applied them really, really, really to a T here. And we found what works in our practice. But so you have to take the concepts and then run. Because we've shown you the ropes. Yes, there are a lot of things that people can directly apply. There's tools that can be directly used, but it's going to be this much different, and selling it just seemed disingenuous, and I guess it made more sense to just give it away.
Truthfully, I think that's 100% right. Because that was one of the platforms that we weren't hitting people on, was a reference text or some type of a resource, something that can be bought, because that's what you see, right? It's like, oh, well, you have the manuals, you have the books, you have the walkthroughs. And I think where I was really starting to hit a struggle was, but there's so much more than what you can put as writing on paper. That's the problem, is that there really isn't a linear way that you can lay out this material in a chapter base. It's so intimately complex. And then it's the same thing. Like I want to have this information just out there. It's going to move faster if it's free. It's just how it works, So, and that's the whole point. Like we wouldn't be doing our education portal online. We wouldn't be doing a lot of these other things because we need the money to do it. And that was actually, I had spoke with, there's someone we had done a webinar with, and she had a couple of different books that she had written. And I just kind of caught her afterwards, and I was just like, so, whatever. And she's like, yeah, we got to make sure you get paid because the publishers and this and this. And I'm like, this world sounds terrible. I'm like,
make it free.
yeah, I'm like, I don't want to.
What if it's just free,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But the other thing is that I felt like in providing it free is that no one can really bitch about it either.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
If it's like, all right, well, you didn't pay anything for it, you get what you pay for. But really, it's like, no, having really, really high quality resources, really having high quality training tool, but having that latitude and that freedom to completely change it as we need to change it because it needs to change, and not it's like, well, I sold you, this copyrighted text this year, but we just changed chapters 4 and 5, so you got to buy the new book next year. Just keep updating these little things. Like anyone who's ever bought any book in college ever.
Yeah, you mean every science textbook on the face of the planet?
Yeah, I mean that I don't have my organic chemistry book in my room, because I can't sell it because no one uses it anymore.
Yes,
Nobody will buy it. It's fine.
Yeah, no, it is a tome to money poorly spent. Yeah,
dude, I have a tote that's like this big, like 4 feet long, like 3 feet deep. That's literally full of college textbooks.
Yeah, I have organic chemistry. I have biochem. Never looked at them. I just can't sell them because no one can use them anymore.
It's like 2 editions old, and it's now worthless.
Yep. Yeah. I love that.
I don't.
Yeah.
I feed off that, really. I just love throwing my money at things.
Yes.
But I was gonna add too, is that like what you're talking about too? I've seen so many things that are like subscriptions for veterinary students or programs you can just pay $300 for, and I'm like,
Just
do you know what
$300?
$300 to a veterinary student is? Like, that's a brand new car in my eyes. Like, are you kidding me? So like just hearing that, yes, I'd love to have those resources. I'd love to have all these things, but I just can't fathom just shucking it out there. And then what you have is just like, you give people, only certain groups of people can have this, and
you have the pipeline.
The pipeline and the privileged people. I don't want to call them privileged people. The people who can put that forth as their number one important thing. That's awesome that they can, but not everyone can. But when you make something free and available to those, like that is when you're going to get the most audience and help the most people.
That's 100%.
And make the biggest difference.
Yeah. Yes. And I think it plays off of my just, I guess, personal philosophy that really knowledge is not power. Knowledge is a responsibility. So it's not something that we should hold and covet as this thing that I have and you aren't allowed to have. It's, no, I have this thing and you need to have it. Like, you need to have what I figured out. You need to have, whatever it is, efficiency, process, culture, core value, management, all of these things, because that's the only way that I can actually get you through the industry faster. And it's time allocation and usage. It's not fast for the sake of being fast and clunky. It's fast from the sake of like, please God, don't try to figure out all the stuff that I've already figured out.
We were talking about this at dinner. Why on earth are we going to learn how to make the wheel 10 different times? Like, somebody already figured it out. Like, PAW has it all here. At least like the basics, right? Like, you have like some of those easy resources that took you guys forever. I'm sure
lots of hundreds of hours.
Like 5 hours for this one little bitty box, right? Like, why?
I hope Katie's watching this and she's just going to be triggered about some of the ERT stuff.
But like,
which
why?
Is a full overhaul.
Why make every single person relearn that? That doesn't make any sense for any progression of the industry. If you're making every single vet clinic, every single veterinarian start from where you started, because I suffered, so you have to suffer too. That just hurts.
No, there was a substantial plateauing in progress. That's really what it is. As soon as we started to grab onto this and hold on to this, it was just like, we are done growing as an industry. And now it's not even a matter of plateauing growth.
We're like going
We
down.
are just complete failure. So you're exactly right. And that's where, for me, again, I would like to think I'm not that much older than you guys, which I really don't think that I am. However, really...
Just like a little.
It's a little bit. Yeah, that's fine. Not 10, 15 years. Anyway, but like for me to kind of live that life through kind of the late 80s or into the early 90s and see what a lot of these clinics were, but seeing this massive upswing, because for me, I'm always analyzing hindsight, trying to make, sort of decisions in the future. But like, for me, it was always like, man, it was just this huge growth as an industry. It just flew up in the 90s.
Yeah, and then we hit a brick ceiling.
Yeah.
Like there was no glass
There was
ceiling
no glass
that shattered.
ceiling.
We
No.
just hit it and just fell.
Yeah.
Like,
right. Yeah. And so that's where for me, and that's actually then going, truthfully, what had happened was you see this huge growth. I went into vet school. I came out and I was like, what is happening? And then it was like 5, 8, 10 years went by and I'm like, oh my God, this is happening, and it's, so, but then I think now, for you guys, for you as generations of young professionals, it's what I would like to assume is that you are unwilling to deal with the bullshit that it is.
Yeah, we talked about this.
Yeah,
Like part of the reason I have some issues at clinics in the past is because things have been said and I've been like, why? That doesn't make any sense. Like, can we work to fix it? And they're like, no. And I'm like,
that's just the way it is.
it's just the
For
way
the
it is.
time and true.
It is what we have always done. I hate that phrase with such a burning passion because, like, I want to change. I want to progress. And they're like, oh, you can have a job when you graduate. And I'm like, I don't want one from you.
Right. Yeah.
Like, because you just told me that I can't grow. I can't do anything here that is gonna like progress or make anything better here because this is the way it is.
Yeah, I get asked a lot. Sorry.
No, please do.
Because I'm interested in practice ownership. I've made that very clear very early on that I want to. But people ask me, well, why? Well, a huge reason stems from that because the way things that we're doing right now don't work. They can't work, and I refuse to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Like even just speaking on culture, because that's one of my big things is that I'm passionate about is that the cultures that I've seen and unfortunately been a part of, this is not the way. And I've heard even the term, well, emergency is always toxic, and like that is not true, and it doesn't have to be true. And what forces me, but almost makes me like, there's no other way because like that is not going to be my future, and I don't want it to be the future of the veterinary industry as a whole.
No.
So there is no other choice other than to make a stance and start changing things yourself.
I couldn't agree more. Yes.
That was amazing. That was perfect.
I don't want to run
I've
past
ranted
it
on this.
because
I've ranted a lot too.
Emergency is always toxic. That's a phrase. Now, have you heard this before?
Yes.
Okay.
That's how the people are.
But okay, so walk me through. Now, have you asked the reasoning why?
Yes.
So to like, because here's what my challenge is for you guys, right? All right, if you have somebody that's been in an emergency setting for 5 days or 5 years or 5 centuries, or decades. There we go.
Not centuries.
Close.
Words.
Yeah.
All right, so why do they have that perception? Because if we can empathize with that position, then we can start to solve the problem in the light that will make sense to them, right? We can't just say your opinion is invalid. Like, you're perceiving the idea that everybody and everything that is within emergency medicine for veterinary care is toxic, and I want to solve that problem with you, not for you. That's rescuing. That's different. But how do we understand that position better? Because we all in this room agree that's a farce. Like, we don't believe that to be a reality. But if we don't empathize with that position and start to understand how they perceive reality, we're never going to share it, and we can never solve the problem. So walk me through why they think that is.
Yeah, and I've actually done that a little bit because when I laid out my 1, 3, 5 year goals and what I want in my future practice, like where do I see myself in 10 years and what do my dream practice look like? I actually thought about that because I'm like, well, how am I going to make this happen? If I don't want that to be my future, then how am I actually going to make that happen? And I've asked those questions, and unfortunately a lot of it comes to, emergency in itself. They talk about no work-life balance, the overworked hours, not enough staff because there's burnout, so people leave when they say this isn't for me or my family's more important, they leave. And that also has to do with, I think a lot of it is the burnout of, unfortunately, euthanasias as well, like seeing the things that if you work in areas, and I have worked in areas that don't have the monetary income to supply what they want to do with their pets, so that gets placed onto the veterinary staff and the team, and they have to take that in. So a lot of it from what I've experienced and heard from the people who have said that actual phrase, like, well, that's just how emergency is, or, oh, like those technicians in emergency are just mean because they have to be. And I'm like, well, why? But a lot of it comes down to when you ask them is that I'm overworked. I can't trust the team. I can't be there for my family when I need to be for my family. And I just don't have the support that I need to have here. And then you have one person, but one person is enough. But when you add in 5 people who are all come to work with their own issues and then all bringing that together, that's just a snowball for an awful environment. And it's not just at one practice.
Right.
That's where you get that phrase, well, emergency is just like that, because that's not just one person's experience.
Yeah.
That's many people's experience when you come into vet school. Like, well, every emergency practice I've worked at is like that. Well, why? And it's all over the place, and that's why, like, what drives me for practice ownership, because I don't want that to be the future, and we have to get, like you said, we have to get down to the base nitty-gritty. How can we change that? Because we can't just say, yep, that's not going to happen. We're not going to change that. But how can we make that better for the team? So that doesn't have to happen.
Yeah.
And you can go to your emergency clinic and love to do things you want to do and go home and still enjoy your life and not regret or think about work the entire shift after.
Right. What about you, Rebecca?
And a lot of it is pretty similar to that. I think the only other thing is that they've justified it with, like, oh, it's a dog eat dog world, or like if I don't watch my back, like, they will stab me. Like, I will be stabbed in the back if I make a mistake, if anything like that. Like, I have to be this harsh on other members of my team, otherwise they're going to come, like, almost they're going to come for me kind of thing. Like, I need to be tough, and if I'm not tough, if I have, like, the empathy and I am willing to kind of collaborate with members of my team and go against the grain, then I won't have a job. So I'm going to reinforce this culture that we have, because it means that I can stay here and I can pay my bills, because I don't have enough time outside of work to have that family life balance. Or I guess I don't really believe in, like, a balance per se. There's, like, you have buckets, and like, you decide what, like, based on who you are, what size those buckets need to be, and you need to fulfill those. But at some point you're going to have more time in work, but to always be, they're always putting all of their time in work. They can't look for another job where they would be more fulfilled, because they're always at work. They're always thinking about work. They're always being reprimanded about work. And that's just a terrible way to live. So talking to them, I've tried to find some implementable things that can at least be fixed. Like, okay, like, you're feeling overworked. How do we fix that? Well, largely we need more staff. Okay, why don't we have enough staff? It's because, like you said, they're leaving. The average is it 7 years now in the profession? Like,
nurses, techs,
So, I mean, okay, why are they leaving? Let's fix the reasons why they're leaving, and basically PAW. So, yeah.
And that was, so the reason that I ask is, again, kind of circling back to the title of the podcast today of the PAW Health Way, because what I want you to do is imagine a world where, because we started about how you guys have experience in GP and how we've kind of seen the pitfalls in that, and now, it's a lot of it maybe third party, but also having experience in other ERs. Now imagine both of those worlds, but also having 7 layers of corporate bullshit between you and actually implementing a solution.
You see, I refuse to be a part of that. So,
and that's why I'm glad that we are not just blowing smoke. And not that I ever really thought that we were just full of ourselves and thought that this was the only way.
We could have faked it for the first year.
Maybe.
No, you could have. You could have,
But really what I'm getting at is, if people don't grab the reins now, that's all the reality is going to be in 10 years. It's all going to be corporate owned, and then it's all going to be toxic, because no one's going to change it.
Yeah, all I can think about is human medicine. Whenever they, the 80s when they had, like, the big switch? And
that's when they started.
And
Yeah.
And who likes going to the doctor?
No, not even a single bit. And having, like, I guess, working towards a place where especially once I got into vet school, I was like, no, like,
Yeah.
I want to love it. Like, like I feel that I could love it more than I do, but like I know myself, and if I get out into the profession and that's all there is in 10 years, where all it is corporate medicine and disparagement and just terrible mentality and culture surrounding everything, I will leave.
Yeah.
I will, without a doubt, find something else, find something that makes me happy and fulfilled. And I'm not a kind of person to give up. I am very stubborn, very, very stubborn. So I was like, no, absolutely not. So how do I make that not be a thing? And it was okay. Like, we're gonna start now, like before I get out, and we're gonna figure out how to make it so that isn't a reality.
Yeah, and I think I think one little tip of the hat is to, that world of corporate medicine and kind of the void that it's filling currently. Because when the only option that we have, is dying in tradition or dying in corporate medicine, like, I think the one thing that when you kind of hear different veterinarians who work corporate, I think, what's kind of like the common thing they say they usually like, well, I have my hours. When I go in, I clock out. When I'm done, I'm done. Like a lot of the times, and it's like so you kind of talk about filling the buckets or whatever, but like I do understand those veterinarians, and it's not to speak ill of those veterinarians who do work corporate, but I think what we're talking about is a greater shift of the industry as a whole to say that, you can definitely get something out of corporate medicine. And I think that's where if you're racing for a paycheck, that might be there. If you're racing for hours, that might be there. But for me, what I see is the long-term success of the PAW Way is essentially having every positive thing that we want in the industry from the industry that we created within the industry. There isn't a reason why we can't have the hours that we want. There isn't a reason why we can't have the culture that we want, that we can't have financial stability, that our veterinary nurses or technicians can't have a livable wage, that they can't have the benefits equal to that you would see in a doctor package, and even not even just for your veterinary nurses or technicians, the entire team having livable wages and having benefits and a lot of these things where, that was one of the big things. The Affordable Care Act actually substantially improved our ability to get the benefits as a business, a small business for our staff. It's not perfect, but for what it is as small business owners, it's like, all right, I can kind of play this game a little bit with the big boys, and that's even last week we had kind of said, that the people really are the assets of the practice. It's the only thing that can continually grow. Everything else depreciates. So to really look at that long-term goal, that we have within the industry, it's like there just really isn't going to be a place for corporate medicine the more people who stand up and the more people who say, it's what's going to come after me. I'm going to have to put in the extra work so the people who come after me don't have to work as hard. And I think that we as a culture have lost that. And I'm not even just saying just in America, but I think generally speaking, I like capitalism, I like all these different things. But the thing that gets lost is that it's not just us. It's not just me. I'm not just doing this work for me. I am, basically ushering in, or, we as a team are basically just sort of handing off the reins to the new generation. But we have forgotten that it is our responsibility to make it better. And the more that, and if we have a short amount of time to do it, we have about 10 to 15 years to do it, but it will be unstoppable once it starts going beyond just one location. And that's, again, it's just exponential growth. 2 becomes 4, becomes 16, it's like, so that's really when we look at the long-term goal is it's there. It's there. We just need the entrepreneurs. We just need the people willing to take the reins. And that's the big thing between individual advancement and industrial advancement. We need people working just as hard on the local level as we do on the state level and the national level. We need everyone to be pulling their part. And that's why when we talk about being the force of change, it's so important for us to be an individual focused on individual problems locally with local people and local teams, because we know we are serving a greater purpose. We are serving the greater cause of being the force of change and getting rid of all of these things. The dying in tradition, the dying in corporate, the poor work-life balance, all the things we have on the industry overview are simply going away. We have forgotten at PAW Health a lot of those problems. We have simply forgotten that they exist. So to say that we've done it really in less than 5 years, because we've just kind of been maturing it here the last year and a half or so, is it's totally attainable. You know, and but yeah, so I know as far as the PAW Way, you know, I think that's the, you know, for us, but, you know, I think the looking into the future, you know, is, I think just kind of probably on an ending note is, and I think we may touch this off a little bit earlier, but it's, does it seem attainable? Does it seem like it's doable? Like
it has to be.
It has. We don't have a choice for it not to be. So
that's a PAW answer.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 It is attainable though, and I do foresee it in the future.
Yeah.
Like I refuse to let it be anything else, but yes,
Yes.
I do agree that it is attainable. It's shown, and we just have to expand it.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right. Well, good.
I guess
How'd we
we're
do?
not full of. I guess we're not full of crap.
Yeah, I know. Right. Exactly.
I know.
I know. Ben
you
was
guys
really
got a
looking
good review.
forward.
I know
Yeah,
Carla
yeah.
was like, just go in there and tell them how much you hate PAW Health.
Yeah.
Like actually, my book of notes, it's actually just how much I hate every single part
Yeah.
of PAW Health.
There is not a single positive thing I've written. Yeah.
Right, ever. Not about this at all.
I wasn't actually scared of that, but there was always that thought in the back of my head of like
Like, what?
they could just completely ruin this whole thing.
Yeah.
Live on the
Yeah, I
internet.
know. He immediately is like, oh, cut.
Yeah.
Oh,
Technical
technical stuff.
You guys want to talk about trust? So I got my little buttons here, right? I used to have an end broadcast button on here, and I took it off today.
Oh.
Wow.
I am honored that you.
We should have pranked Ben. That's what we should have done. We should have gotten together and pranked him.
He start the podcast.
Panicking.
He's like, I gotta add the button
Shut
back.
it down. Just pull the actual power cable. Just yank it.
See, the problem is that's an uninterruptible power
It's
supply.
true.
I
It's
got to
true.
unplug 8 things for
Yeah.
a thing to not work. But we're doing great. We're at just about an hour. We've got a few people that are still kind of hanging on with us too. So
Cool.
with that, I guess, do you guys have any additional thoughts, Bre? This will probably be the last time you're here in person in the studio for a while. Rebecca, we're probably gonna keep hooking you in since you're here all summer. We're gonna get Amy in here as well throughout the next few months also. But any final thoughts from either of you guys?
One, I'm so sad to be leaving. If I didn't have cats at home, I would.
Yeah.
That's how much my cats mean to me. I'd be
I
here,
get it.
but
That's fine.
these last 3 weeks have been absolutely phenomenal, and I don't know how I'm even going to say goodbye on Friday to everybody. I know I'll be back. That's like the thing. I'm like, you're going to be back. Like,
Yeah.
you'll be back. You're going to see everybody. You'll be fine. But the amount of experience that I have gotten here within, and I can't thank, I mean, most of my days have been with Carlo. I can't thank Carlo enough for all that we've been able to do in these, like, the short time frame of 3 weeks, but I generally do feel like I am leagues ahead of some of, like, where I ever thought I would be at this point. Cat space,
Yeah,
got him.
right,
Don't even,
down.
I got him. Don't worry about it. Like drug calculations, that used to scare me a lot because our farm class wasn't great.
I don't know what you're talking
Or
about.
what
It's
farm class there is.
fantastic.
It's fine. It's fine. We're not talking about it. That's one
Yeah.
story. But anyways, a lot of the areas that I had concerns about, or these were my goals for my 3 weeks here, have been absolutely exceeded and beyond. And I don't even. It's not even just that we've met them. Like, I feel confident in them, and that is phenomenal because, like, if I'm at that step now, like, I'm excited for the future. I can't wait to get out. I can't wait to come back in a year and be like, well, I already got the cat space. Like, give me the GDVs. Give me the, like, I don't have the license yet. It's
Which
fine.
are substantially easier.
Yeah, right.
They
Like,
are.
I'm ready for that next
They
step,
are.
and that is something like, not that I didn't think that would be a thing,
Yeah.
but just that it's phenomenal, and I feel like everyone should, like, I can't even imagine not having an externship at PAW Health for all that it can do for you, and I'm so happy that this isn't my actual externship. This is my pre-externship, so I can come back and just nail it out of the park and keep learning and keep, like, being a better veterinarian, because I just can't wait to get out of the gate when I get that license, pass that NAVLE, and just start going, because that's what I'm looking forward
for you.
to. So
Yeah.
I've just been absolutely thankful for everything a part of PAW Health, and everyone should get over to PAW Health.
They should.
Yeah.
And grateful that you were able to be here as well. I know that we are more than a stone's throw away from where you are.
It's only
so-
8 hours,
It's fine.
guys.
I mean, that's
fine.
not that far.
No, it's
But,
drivable in a
Not
day.
for PAW Health, it's not.
Yeah, I would drive. Make the drive.
But yeah, I guess, Rebecca, if you got anything, I mean, you're just rolling in, basically.
I've been here. Oh, is it like a week and a half now?
That was 8, 9
With
days.
I don't know, but I've only worked on the floor 2 days.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I've explored, like, the area a ton, and I'm really excited to just get in here and, like, just fully immerse in everything.
Yeah, and you'll have a really unique perspective too, kind of taking that MSS role for the summer.
Yep.
That actually, I think, as a veterinary nurse or DVM student, like to really work as an MSS, you see a lot of different facets of the clinic.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
Annie was talking with me, and she was like, "Well, do you want to train like up at your like the CSS stuff?" And I was like, "Absolutely!
Yeah.
I want to see every
Yeah.
little thing you guys can show me. If you got like a back closet somewhere where
Oh,
you know you
Trevor's
got
office.
yeah,
Trevor's
basically,
office. Yeah.
like I want to see it. Like I want to know everything because that's like."
Yeah.
That's who I am. I need to know like
Yeah.
all the different parts and how they fit together and like why it's working.
Yeah.
Like I know what like it's working, but like
Yeah.
how do we show everybody else in all these little pieces? And I'm really excited to like get into that and just like you said, just run with it and just go.
I thought it was really funny that as soon as you came, I was like, "Look at my gifts that Carlo gave me
Yeah.
today." I was like, "Look at this awesome sheet of facts."
and she goes, and then the next day she comes home and she goes, "I got a binder for you. It's a present." And I was like, "This is the best birthday present I've ever gotten."
And then Amy gets in the door, and Amy's not even moved in yet. She's like 5 minutes in of putting her stuff down in the house. I'm like, "I have a present for you," and I bring her this gift, and I'm like, "Look at it."
It's magical.
Oh, the
Look at it.
Yeah, the kangaroo resources. So
Because I was gonna make my own because I was like, oh, a lot of them are saved on my
we got
computer.
you.
And then I was like, he put it in a binder.
Yeah.
I know. I told Carla, I was like, it's like Christmas, my birthday, all wrapped in one on all these days.
Yeah, and actually that came from the dosing sheets. I was just like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you would want that?" You're like, "Yes."
Yes.
I was like,
"Can
"Alright,
I
that's
take a
fine.
picture
I'll
or
get
maybe
some
a
more."
copy?" And you're like, "Just have them." And I was like,
What?
"Excuse me? I'm gonna go cry. Hold on."
Yeah. So, all right, wonderful.
So yeah, we're to the point where it's your job.
Okay. All right, guys. All right. Yeah. Thanks for another live podcast. But thanks all you guys for tuning in today, and those who may be watching us after on the recorded side. But thank you guys, and we'll catch you next time.